Hello and welcome back to another Strat Gaming video guide. In this video, we're going to take an in-depth look at Fiefs. By the end, you will know everything there is to know about loyalty, tax, income, village hearth growth, and so much more. I release 2 to 3 Bannerlord videos and guides per week, so if you're interested in seeing more, consider subscribing. As always, timestamps are in the description for your convenience, and let's get to work. Let's start with a quick overview of Fiefs in Bannerlord. A fief consists of a town or castle and their bound villages. Most castles have 2 bound villages, with a couple having only one. Towns can have anywhere from 2 to 4 bound villages, so not all fiefs are created equally. Once we own a fief, we can begin managing it by going to the Manage Town or Castle tab. Let's start with the town first. At the top left, we can see all workshops currently in the town and who owns them. There is also information about what these workshops make and what materials are required for them to produce goods. This basket in the top middle displays the current goods being consumed by the town. The top right shows detailed information of each bound village. Notice how some will show more information than others. If the village is within our campaign map sight range, then you will be able to see more details. If the village is too far to sight, you will get just basic information. We can assign a governor to each settlement if we wish. Clicking on the plus will bring up the governors, and hovering your mouse over the portrait will display all of their governor perks. The stats in the middle are the most important part of the management screen and display the key metrics for our fief. We will go into each of these in great detail soon. Next, we have the town reserve. We can add money here, which will help boost construction projects significantly. The projects section show all of the available buildings and their associated level. Each building provides a specific benefit to the town and are incredibly important, which we will see shortly. The daily defaults at the bottom of the page are continuous projects that give a specific bonus. These will only be activated if no other building projects are currently underway. This section displays what the current project is, what associated benefits come with it, and a queue showing the order in which buildings will be completed. The management screen for a castle is slightly different, but should look familiar. We lose the workshop and consumed goods info at the top. The reserve funds use only 250 dinars per day instead of 500. Some of the building projects are different, and towns have 12 buildings, but castles have only 11. Towns have access to the forum and aqueducts, while castles do not. Castles have access to the castellan's office, while towns do not. Now let's take a look at what each building does at different levels. Fortifications are the walls for the town and increase the garrison size by 25, 50, and 100 respectively. They also increase the fortification bonus for auto-resolve battles, as well as change the map for in-person battles. Level 3 walls are significantly harder to defeat than level 0. Castles have walls instead of fortifications, but the bonuses are identical. Training fields are the same for towns and castles and grant passive XP for garrison troops by 1, 2, or 3 XP per day. The forum is exclusive to towns and grants passive influence gains of 0.5, 1, and 1.5 per day. The granary increases the food storage limit for both towns and castles, allowing the town and garrison to survive longer during sieges before starving. Towns get 200, 400, and 600 food extra per level, while castles get 100, 150, and 200 food storage. Siege workshops work the same for both castles and towns and grant a plus 50 to wall repair speed at all levels and a plus 30, 60, and 100 siege production speed bonus, allowing for faster siege engine production when being sieged. The garrison barracks works the same for both towns and castles and increases the garrison size by 30, 60, and 100. Fairgrounds are the same for towns and castles and grant 0.5, 1, and 1.5 loyalty per day. Ignore the tooltip, settlement morale is not a thing. Towns have a marketplace while castles have toll collectors. The marketplace provides a 5, 10, and 15% bonus to tax collection, while toll collection gives a 10, 20, and 30% increase to taxes. Aqueducts are exclusive to towns and provide a prosperity bonus of 0.3, 0.6, and 1 prosperity per day. Orchards can be built in towns and provide a 6, 12, or 18 food per day bonus, while gardens are made in castles and produce 3, 6, and 9 food per day. Militia grounds are found in both towns and castles. In a town, they produce 0.5, 1, and 1.5 militia per day, while in a castle, they make 1, 2, and 3 militia per day. Workshops are also built in both, but towns produce 3, 6, and 9 construction per day, while castles only make 1, 2, and 3 per day. Finally, the castellan's office can only be built in castles and reduce the wages of garrison troops by 10, 20, and 30% with each level. In order to upgrade a building, we need to queue each one individually. The plus sign on the left adds the current selection to the queue, while the one on the right will remove all other buildings in the queue and replace them with this upgrade. Each building has a construction cost, which can be seen at the bottom. Some buildings cost more than others, and each subsequent level will be more expensive than the last. In this case, the Siege Workshop will require 1,000 construction to complete. We can see the current output of our town here. We are producing 28 construction per day. At this rate, it will take just over 35 days to complete. There are several things we can do to speed this time up. Hovering the mouse over construction will give us a breakdown of what's currently affecting our output. We're gaining 45 from prosperity as well as a couple debuffs, minus 13 from low loyalty as well as minus 3 from our culture. Here is a list of all possible modifiers for construction. We start with 10% of the town's current prosperity as the base construction value. Workshops can add 3 to 9 construction per day for towns and 1 to 3 for castles. Towns will consume tools and add up to 5 per day depending on how many are in stock. Boosting reserves will add 50 construction per day for towns and 20 per day for castles. The policy Castle Charters reduces the construction cost of each castle upgrade by 20%. We can see a reduction from 500 construction without the policy down to 400 with. Governors with engineering skill will add a flat 25 construction per 100 levels of engineering. There are also 9 governor perks that can help increase building speed. We will be looking at a ton of perks in this guide and we won't have time to look at all of them, but I'm going to compile each list into a single document and post it in the Discord for easy reference. Check the description for the link. When using a Botanian character, we will have a minus 10 debuff to construction due to the culture. Loyalty can have a massive effect on construction, both positive and negative. There are 3 stages. From 100 down to 76, we will see a positive bonus towards construction. From 20% at the high end all the way down to 1% at the bottom. From 75 to 50, there will be no bonus, but we also have no debuff. Finally, we get a debuff of about 2% starting at 49 and increase to 100% at 25 loyalty. That's right, at 25 loyalty and below, it's impossible to build anything. Let's finish off this section by looking at the daily defaults. In order to enable a daily default, we need to clear the building queue out. This can be done by clicking the 1 on any building, then pressing the plus sign right after. You will know it's working when the daily default picture is displayed on the right-hand side. Housing will convert 1% of our construction output into prosperity. Trained militia will convert 3% of our construction output into militia. Festival and games will convert 3% of our construction into loyalty, and irrigation will convert 1% into village hearth growth for all bound villages. Keep in mind, these values are based solely on the construction output, so everything listed previously can help increase the efficiency of these bonuses. Reserve boosts the output significantly, but the daily default does not consume the reserve, so be sure to have at least 1 day's worth of reserves if you're using them. After looking at construction output, it's clear that loyalty is a very important stat for a fief, so let's explore that topic next. As we saw with construction, when loyalty is high, we get amazing buffs, and when loyalty is low, we get devastating debuffs. If we were to remove all loyalty modifiers, both good and bad, fiefs would tend towards an equilibrium of 50 loyalty. As we add in buffs and debuffs, there is a counter debuff or buff added back in to try to return back to 50, which they term loyalty drift. Loyalty drift is calculated as minus 10% of the distance from 50. So for example, at 60 loyalty, we see a minus 1 loyalty drift, and at 100, we see a minus 5. It works the same in the other direction. At 40 loyalty, we see a plus 1, and at 0, we see plus 5. I like to think of loyalty drift as a rubber band that wants to snap back to 50. Now let's look at all possible modifiers for loyalty. Loyalty drift can range from plus 5 to minus 5. Security above 50 adds loyalty on a sliding scale. Every 10 security above 50 will add 0.2 loyalty, so at 100 security, we will gain plus 1 loyalty. Security below 50 reduces loyalty similarly, but the effect is doubled. For every 10 security below 50, it will reduce loyalty by 0.4 with a max at minus 2 at 0 security. Having a governor of the same culture as the town will grant plus 1 loyalty per day, but having a different culture will reduce loyalty by 1 per day. The fairgrounds building will increase loyalty depending on the level. At level 3, it will increase loyalty by 1.5. If any notable has quests within the town or their attached villages, we will get a minus 0.1 up to minus 0.5 loyalty debuff depending on the type. Once the quests time out or is solved, the debuff will disappear. For every notable in a town that is supporting us, we will gain plus 0.5 loyalty per day. Getting notables to support us can be done by raising relations with them to above 50. It is RNG as to when they will support you, and they must not be currently supporting another clan. If the settlement is starving, we will get a minus 1 loyalty debuff. If our starting culture does not match the culture of the fief we own, we get a -3 loyalty per day debuff. The daily default festival in games converts 3% of our fief's current construction output into settlement loyalty. There are 4 governor perks that increase loyalty by 1 per day, 3 of which should be accessible by most companions, although the one for medicine is tough. There are 6 kingdom policies that will increase loyalty. I generally avoid grazing rights, but all of the others are good, especially forgiveness of debts. We can pick up a total of 5.5 loyalty with all 6, or +5 without grazing rights. Before we move on to the next topic, we should have a quick discussion about rebellions. If the loyalty in our town goes too low, we run the risk of losing it to a rebellion. These are the conditions that need to be met in order for a rebellion to spawn. Loyalty must be below 25 and runs a low risk of a rebellion, and below 15 runs a high risk of rebellion. Our main character cannot be inside the town. It's impossible for rebellions to happen while we are waiting in the town. The militia needs to outnumber our garrison by a certain amount. Moving on to security. This is a much simpler topic, so let's dive right into all the possible modifiers. Much like loyalty, there is a security drift that wants to stay at 50. It increases by 0.67 for every 10 security away from 50, so at 0 the debuff is +3.33 and at 100 it is -3.33. Placing troops into the garrison will increase the security of the settlement. The troop tier makes a huge difference, as you can see here. 200 tier 1 troops provide only 1.32 security and consume 10 food, but 200 tier 6 troops provide 5.12 security and consume the same 10 food. We can increase the garrison size by leveling up leadership with our main character or a couple governor perks. Garrisons will automatically recruit troops from bound villages and towns unless we turn this off on the party screen. We can also limit the wages of garrison troops by clicking here and using the slider. The town prosperity contributes a debuff to security and is about 0.05%. For every 1,000 in prosperity, there will be an accompanying -0.5 debuff to security. Quests from gang leaders will add +1 security while they are unfinished, whereas notables quests cause a -1 security while unfinished. These can stack, so 2 unfinished gang quests will give +2 and 2 quests from bound villages will give -2. Nearby bandit hideouts give a -2 security debuff while they are on the map. To remove the debuff, destroy the hideout. There are 3 kingdom policies that can increase security. I don't recommend serfdom because of the militia and prosperity loss, but the other 2 are good. There are 11 governor perks that increase the security in a settlement, and many of which are accessible since they are lower levels and in skills that are easier for a companion to level, such as one-handed, bow, and crossbow. Let's finish covering the rest of the easier topics before we cover prosperity because my brain needs a break. Militia are free troops that generate over time based on the prosperity of the town. These are not high-quality troops, but they don't cost anything to recruit, maintain, or feed, so they are completely free. Here are all the possible modifiers. +2 base comes with every fief regardless of the prosperity. Prosperity adds 0.1% of the fief's prosperity as militia per day, so for every 1,000 prosperity we have, it will generate +1 militia per day. Botania get +1 militia from their cultural bonus, but it only applies to towns and not castles. Retirement is the same rubber band mechanic that loyalty and security have and is meant to keep militia from growing to infinity. I'm not positive of the exact formula, but I've seen low prosperity fiefs reach equilibrium at 0.35% of prosperity all the way down to 0.17% of prosperity on high prosperity fiefs. The militia grounds building can be upgraded to produce 1.5 militia per day at level 3. The daily default trained militia will convert 3% of our current construction output into militia troops. These 4 policies can increase militia quantity or quality. Militia can spawn as the regular tier 2 garbage or the veteran militia, which are actually quite decent. There are 9 governor perks that can increase militia recruitment. One Hand, Polearm, and Steward are each level 50 perks and can add +2 if we get all 3, which is very doable for just about any companion. Settlement tax is the amount of money that actual town or castle generates. This is not the full income of the fief, as villages generate their own income and towns also generate tariffs from trading. The settlement tax value has the following modifiers possible. Approximately 35% of the fief's prosperity is paid out as the base tax income. For every 1,000 prosperity a fief has, it will generate 350 dinars per day. Towns can build a marketplace to increase tax income by up to 15%, and castles can build a toll collector to increase tax income by up to 30%. High loyalty will add a bonus to daily tax income, which starts at 76 and above. At 100 loyalty, the bonus maxes out at +20% and goes down to nothing at 75. Corruption will reduce our tax income and is caused by having a security of less than 50. For every 10 security security we are below 50, it adds -2% debuff to taxes all the way down to -10% at 0 security. There are 12 perks for increasing a fief's income. The ones increasing tariffs are mostly useless as tariff income is small, usually around 100 to 200 per day, and a 10% increase would generate 10 to 20 dinars more. There are a few kingdom policies that can increase income for fiefs, but I generally find the negatives outweigh the positives. There are many policies that will decrease town income, so be aware of that. For the final section, we will look closely at food, prosperity, and bound villages. Let's start with all possible modifiers for food. Towns start with a base value of +15 food per day called inside production. Castles start with +10. Bound villages will contribute food depending on their hearths. At 1 to 199, they will give a +6 food per day. From 200 to 599, they will give +12, and at 600 and above, they give +18. Keep in mind, some fiefs have more bound villages than others, making food production easier. Towns can upgrade an orchard to produce up to 18 food per day at the highest level. Castles have gardens which can produce up to 9 food per day. Food that is currently in the town's inventory will also contribute to the town's food supply. Each food item has its own modifier and will fluctuate as those goods are bought and sold. If we buy out all food items, we can see a massive deficit in the town's food supply of -177. If we were to sell 1 million of each food type and wait for the daily tick, we can see a huge surplus of 451 now. Take note that not all food types are consumed equally. Grain is the most heavily consumed food item, with fish being in second, but only 1/3 of the consumption rate, and meat is third with nearly 1/5 of the consumption rate. The biggest takeaway here is that most food items add very little to the town's food supply, and grain contributes the most. Even selling as little as 500 grain can increase the food supply by 114 for this town, so keep a stash of grain with you at all times. Prosperity adds a food consumption modifier that is roughly 2.5% of the fief's prosperity. As prosperity rises, food consumption increases and keeps it from growing infinitely. Hunting rights is the only policy that adds food production, albeit quite small at +2 per day. There are a few perks that deal with food consumption, but most only work during a siege. Master of Warcraft reduces food consumption by 5%, which can make a big difference at higher prosperity values. One of the best ways to increase food for our fief is through bound villages. As mentioned earlier, there are 3 levels of hearths: 1 to 199 for level 1, 200 to 599 for level 2, and 600 and above for level 3. There are more benefits to having more hearths in our villages besides increasing food production though. Larger villager parties to carry goods for sale and protecting our village's income. More militia production at the village protecting against raids. More notables per village, which means more that can support us with influence gain, and more troops to recruit. There's a chance to spawn a 3rd notable after 200 hearths and a 4th after 600. They don't happen instantly, so be patient and keep hearths above those thresholds. More production per level, which increases available goods both for sale in the town as well as keeping workshops stocked with necessary inventory to function. At level 1, this grain farm produces 21 grain per day. At level 2, production increases to 46, and at level 3, up to 69 per day. Production does not increase past 600. The daily default irrigation converts 1% of our fief's construction output into hearth growth for all bound villages. Finally, let's talk about prosperity. It's very slow to increase but extremely quick to decrease, so we must be very protective of our fiefs. Let's look at each of the possible modifiers. 10% of the surplus food our fief produces is converted into prosperity. The food reserves need to be filled up to the max first, then the excess will convert over. For towns only, goods from market can add up to +3 per day depending on how many goods are being used up. For towns only, aqueducts can add up to +1 per day at level 3. If loyalty is 76 or above, a flat +5 prosperity is added in. Imperial towns is the only kingdom policy that adds prosperity and is very good if we're the leader of the kingdom. There are 6 governor perks that can add prosperity, but most of them will be difficult to obtain. Level 50 writing for +0.5 prosperity per day is a no-brainer, so be sure to get this with all governors. Certain quests can add prosperity debuffs until they despawn or are completed. This may not be a complete list, but it's what I was able to collect in a reasonable time. Both settlement and village issues can give the debuffs. Notice the worst offender of them all, extortion by deserters, gives a -1 debuff. Be sure to clear these at all costs. Housing costs are added in at a certain prosperity level. We start at -1 once we reach 6,001 prosperity and add -1 for every 3,000 prosperity above that, capping out at -6 when we reach 21,001 prosperity. And finally, the prosperity killer, starvation. If our fief runs out of food reserves and runs a daily deficit, we will have a -50% 50% of the deficit added as a negative prosperity modifier. The most common cause of starvation is through sieges, but can also occur if our villages are raided and our prosperity outgrows the natural food production. The housing daily default converts 1% of our current construction output into prosperity gain. One final point about prosperity before we finish: the number of notables in our town are determined by the prosperity. The more notables a town has, the more troops we can recruit at a time, and the more notables are available to support us with influence. Prosperity less than 3,000 will have 3 notables. At 3,000 we have a chance to gain a 4th, and looking at the graph all the way up to 7,000 prosperity where we can get our 7th. Don't forget to hit that like button to help me out, and consider subscribing if you want more Bannerlord in your life. Thank you for watching and have a great day.